Hey everybody, welcome back to the last of the videos. I know you're all kinds of excited. This is chapter 38. We're going to get into kind of some social changes and that, what's going on in the world, new organizations formed after World War II, and kind of how things are, a little glimpse into kind of how things are today. So let's get started. So the globalization, we can see some new phrases, the Asian tigers and McDonaldization of the world. We're going to find out who Al Qaeda is and some other things that are going on, how the Cold War ended. So we're going to get into that sort of stuff. So the end of the Cold War, Ronald Reagan's president, and he made a speech, in Berlin, went and says, you know what, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. What are you doing this for? Why are you controlling these people? You're forcing your ideology onto these people, and they clearly don't want it. And sure enough, within a few years, they tore it down. It's pretty awesome. I saw it on TV. And Mikhail Gorbachev in '85 becomes premier, and he decides, you know what, we need a little accountability. And so they open things up, this transparency, this glasnost and perestroika, this restructuring and transparency, because people are saying, okay, we're spending 85% of our national budget on national defense, and we're not at war with anybody. We can't buy bread in the store, but we got 5,000 nuclear missiles. It doesn't make any sense. And so, and people started to squawk back, and Mikhail Gorbachev opens things up. And the more that he opened, the more people wanted open, and then more open, and then blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, he's out of a job. And the Communist Party in Russia collapses. And then, of course, with that come revolutions all over Eastern Europe. All these other countries say, hey, we don't have the Soviet Union anymore paying our bills. So what do we do now? And they become independent and quickly want to join the European Union, which a lot of countries did shortly after the wall came down. Places like Romania and Bulgaria, you can see their economy on a track like this through the Cold War, and all of a sudden they join the European Union, and it just goes sky high, just because of those that trade organization doing well. Czechoslovakia, Velvet Revolution, you get Czechia and Slovakia amicably shaking hands, saying, okay, good luck. Yeah, it was tough for a while, but we got it now. And then the wall came down in '89 and Germany reunited. So the collapse of the Soviet Union, of course, now we get 15 new countries in the world. We get all of these guys. Don't forget about Moldova. And then you get these three, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and then you get all the stands all the way over here. So now you got 15 new countries, including Russia, which is now a republic, even though I don't think anybody voted. But now all these countries got to figure out for themselves what they want to do with the absence of the Soviet Union. Germany reunites, that's pretty easy. But a lot of these other countries, how do we get back on track? In Afghanistan, Soviet Union rolls into Afghanistan. You can see here's Afghanistan right here. Nobody really, Soviet Union thought, hey, nobody's going to care if we just roll into this country that's all mountains and goat herders, and the average person makes $100 a year. Let's just roll in and take it and start taking those resources out. But it turns out the United States CIA was buying a whole bunch of surface-to-air missiles, handheld missiles, rocket launchers, and putting them in Israeli crates and shipping them with Israeli stamps into Afghanistan. And these guys, these goat herders, are standing up there shooting down Russian helicopters, and eventually they withdrew in 1989. But the Soviet Union was in there thinking they can do whatever they want, wherever they want, and that's how the United States got them out. They made a movie about it, totally rated R, but it's a good movie. Collapse of the Soviet Union, there's your openness and restructuring all the way through. And one thing that Ronald Reagan did that was brilliant is he comes up with this idea that says, hey, why don't we tell the Russians that we have satellites with laser beams, these high-powered laser beams that can shoot nuclear missiles out of outer space when they shoot them. And they come up with this thing called SDI, and the Soviets believed it. And so why are we spending all this money on more missiles when all the Americans got to do is shoot them down in outer space with laser beams from satellites? Meanwhile, I never had anything like that, but it was believable that the United States could. And that was kind of the end of the Soviet missile program. We start to see some economic globalization. The WTO, the World Trade Organization, took over from the GATT in 1995, trying to regulate world trade and help tariffs and blah, blah, blah. And they don't have the greatest track record, but for the most part, they do some good things. We start to see the more flow of goods, capital, services, labor with intercontinental air travel. We can see goods and services and people move very quickly. Instead of getting on the old slow boat for 2 weeks, now you can be there in a few hours. And of course, Japan benefited a little bit from the Marshall Plan. The United States built Japan back really as an occupied country for about 8 years after the war. And it was real handy to have Japan's factories build stuff for the Korean War. For the United States, they didn't have to ship it all the way over there. And you start to see some, including Japan, but you got four little tigers, these little economic areas that are expanding dramatically, and how they're really making a lot of money and really doing well in the last half of the 20th century. And those are Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. We start to see them really doing a lot of forward looking, right? These places go, we don't care what the world needs today. We're not going to make what the world needs today. We're going to make what the world needs in 5 years, 10 years. We're going to put research and development into figuring out how to make a better, cheaper product that the world's going to need in 5 years. And let's get ahead of the market. So pretty soon, Nikon cameras, Sony radios, Toyota Corollas start flooding the markets, especially in America and in Europe. And next thing you know, the other companies just can't keep up in the local countries, and now you get better trade restrictions, better trade, open trade, and next thing you know, everybody's got a Sony radio and driving a Toyota Corolla. Trade blocks: European Union formed in 1957. The original six, I think, were Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, West Germany, France, and Italy. I think were the six original European Union countries. Now there's like 29 or something. And really, it was a trade tariff-free zone. If you're in one of those countries, you can travel freely from one to the next, and you don't have to pay any tariffs. If you're in France and you want to go work in the Netherlands, you can work there. You don't need a work permit. Just go there and work. You're an EU member, and so it's all one big happy family. And you get another group called OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, controlling 75% of the world's oil production. You think, oh, well, that's good. They can get together and figure out oil production, whatever. Well, what if they decide that they're just going to slow down production by 10%? And so now you get demand staying the same, but supply go down. What's going to happen to the price? It's going to go up. So they can artificially manipulate the world oil price, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So what we see is they use that economic might to put an embargo on U.S. oil. They didn't let the United States sell any of the oil, and they didn't sell to the United States, which caused a massive, massive increase in the U.S. oil price, making gas prices shoot up to, in today's dollars, somewhere around $7 or $8 a gallon. So here's the EU member nations. All these guys. UK just bailed out. Norway was never a member. They like their oil money from the North Sea. They don't want to share it. This is actually a little chunk of Russia here. Switzerland never played with anybody. But you can see some of these countries want to get in. And that's one of the reasons that Vladimir Putin freaked out 3 years ago, is because Ukraine said, we want to join the EU. And of course, he's not going to let that happen. Here's your OPEC members right here, controlling so much of the world's oil production. The United States is really not all that friendly with some of those countries. We start to see the McDonaldization. We start to see countries start to really grow culturally, but culturally with influence from other countries, specifically the United States. We start to see English becoming a predominant language in a lot of these other places. And English being taught as a second language in so many countries. Like I lived in South Korea, and starting in second, third grade, they're taking English all the way through school. And so when a Korean kid gets done with school, their English is pretty good. And why not French? Why not German? Why not Chinese? There's far more Chinese speakers. Well, because of this globalization and America kind of being the trendsetters for a lot of these different things. And also Latino culture in America. Well over 25% of America is Latino now. And so that Latino culture coming into America. Here's population of millions, different parts of the world. Africa, you can see the population growing very, very quickly. That's not 111, that's 1.1 billion. It's a little typo on the thing there. Asia, you can see, has more than quadrupled since 1900. Europe, not even doubled. So you can see very different things going on here. This one's like times 10. This one's quadrupled. This one's not even doubled. Latin America, of course, has almost gone tenfold. North America, you can see Oceania, etc. But world total population has grown tremendously in this time, mostly due to the lack of diseases. Even with all the wars, we still see massive population growth. Some other things, population pressures, etc. We see mortality rate declining. Fewer and fewer people are dying of preventable diseases. And we start to see some global warming going on, greenhouse gases, trying to eliminate the causes of climate change, things like that. Iniquities, labor servitude. There's still a lot of slavery in the world. Even today, there are more slaves today than there was at the height of the slave trade 300 years ago. We see especially kids working as indentured servants, and the global trafficking of humans is a worldwide epidemic. You can call it that, where people are forced into forced labor, and it's a real big problem in so many parts of the world. Global diseases, they want to call for the end of all infectious diseases. Pretty unrealistic, but they gave it their best shot. Malaria is on the rise. Malaria, of course, is a mosquito-borne illness. Tuberculosis is a lung disease. And the big one that hit the world in the 1980s and especially through the 90s was AIDS. There were some countries in Africa that had negative population growth rates. It means they have fewer people than they did the year before, but yet they have super high birth rates. How's that possible? There's so many people dying of AIDS. Places like Eswatini, their death rate was higher than their birth rate because everybody's dying of AIDS. Their life expectancy dropped from like 59 to like 33 because so many people were dying of AIDS. It was crazy. It was an epidemic. So you can see about how many people in each of these places um, had AIDS. A big one was sub-Saharan Africa. Some global terrorism. We know that that started to become very deliberate. The targeting violence against civilians, and of course September 11th. We'll talk about that more in class, where we get this guy that's Osama bin Laden, mad because the United States was in Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War, and he took it upon himself to punish the United States 10 years later, 20 years later, sorry. No, 10 years later, sorry, 1991 to 2001. And he and his group decided to hijack some airplanes and blow up the World Trade Centers, crash them in the World Trade Centers, plus the Pentagon. And then the fourth one was probably headed to the White House or the Capitol, but it crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. George Bush decides to go in because Al Qaeda was being sponsored by old Saddam Hussein, and he decides to go in, overthrow Saddam Hussein, and and take over Iraq, form a friendly government, which eventually is going to be taken over by Islamic extremists. And then they go after bin Laden and they find him in Pakistan in 2011, and he was executed. The United Nations, of course, takes over after World War II, and it's not so much a treaty organization or big military organization, but what it is it's health projects, things like that, eradication of smallpox. They want to. We can take a look at the Millennium Development Goals in the EU. Feel free to take a look at that. But the thing is, they want to support education. They want to support health. They want to support literacy. They want to support all these sorts of things for people all over the world. And they're doing really amazing things through these non-governmental organizations. And there's really some really cool things happening around the world because of the effects of the United Nations and the work of them. Some feminist challenges, of course, we got a lot of women who are now displaced out of jobs because of the men coming back from World War II. We start to see the birth control pill hit the market in 1960, and now women can have a little bit more say in their reproductive rights, things like that. And what we see is more and more women becoming national leaders. Indira Gandhi, Benazir Bhutto, Margaret Thatcher, Angela Merkel, sorry, had to do it the German way. And we start to see some changes on that front. And now migration. We start to see so many people moving into the cities because of overcrowdedness that causes all kinds of problems. A lot of refugees moving here, there, everywhere, and tourism becomes a lot more prevalent due to intercontinental movement. So the end of the Cold War, of course, we start to see the Soviet Union open up and just collapse under its own weight. It couldn't hold itself together anymore. McDonaldization, the world becoming more and more like America. And, that's real easy for Americans, but, at what expense? Asian tigers looking forward, and then some diseases on a global scale, especially AIDS, and then Al Qaeda, the architects of 9/11. So we'll get more into this a little bit as we go along, but we'll see you in class. Thanks, guys.